Welcome to Shiny Shows, and today we'll be talking about Boys Over Flowers. So I want to start off saying, my origins for deciding to watch Boys Over Flowers, because obviously, I'd never heard about Boys Over Flowers before, and obviously, it was never, I think it's usually a lot of people's beginner anime. I mean, not anime, sorry. It's 'cause I was just talking about anime to somebody, but beginner K dramas. So I know that lots of people like to watch it in their very early stages. Obviously, as I said in the description, it wasn't mine, but that's besides the point. I feel like that's besides the point. It wasn't mine. But obviously my reasoning for doing so is because I met someone also at an event recently who told me, we were talking about K-dramas. I love going to places also and like talking about my interest with people, and then not even when the event is anything remotely to do with that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's all well in, like, if you go to an exhibition and you're talking about art, like, it's there, but if you're at a different event and like it's not related to anything that's happening, and then you're talking about something else that you like outside of it, I think that's really gorgeous. So obviously I was with these people and we were talking about K-dramas, and obviously someone was like to me, oh, you should watch Boys Over Flowers. And I was like, oh, and I never really come across Boys Over Flowers before, and I never really heard anything about it either. And I was like, so, oh. And then obviously I did what most people do. I went onto YouTube and I was researching about Boys Over Flowers, and I saw a YouTube video that said Boys Over Flowers is, I think Boys Over Flowers is it horribly or terribly? Either one, because I was getting that messed up earlier today. But yeah, it's horribly amazing. So obviously I was like, oh, horribly amazing. And then obviously I watched a few minutes of the video anyways, but then I obviously stopped because I was like, so if I am gonna watch it, so then I was like, I'm gonna spoil myself if I watch this any longer. But obviously, so I started watching the YouTube video and I was like, wow, this show is insane. But I mean insane in the way that, like, I feel like a drama like Boys with Flowers exactly would not come out now, and that's obviously very, like, understandable, because obviously it was made in 2009 and it has a lot of, I feel like, stuff that wouldn't fly now, if that makes sense. Like, even when I went on Letterboxd after I finished it and people were like, oh, Jung Pyo, like, he should be in jail, and like it has a lot of, I don't know, toxic behaviors. They were obviously saying all of that. So that's why you wouldn't see those kind of toxic behaviors displayed in a show like right now. You wouldn't see that in like Big 2025. Do you get it? It wouldn't happen anymore. And obviously it was like, because, okay, first of all, exactly, let's talk about the beginning of Boys Over Flowers, right? The show starts off so crazy because, of course, it's that whole bullying scene, and the guy is on the roof and he wants to jump off the roof because he's being bullied by F4. And you're probably wondering, who's F4? Well, guys, we don't even really know. Exactly. In the very beginning of the show, and anyways, of that whole bullying sequence, we don't even know who F4 is. We don't even know anything about them. We don't even know what they do. Like, and actually, you know what's funny? Because before you don't see F4, you basically assume they're just some kind of like thug group. Then it comes to be that, they're more so on the wholesome side of a, what's it called, a semi-idol group. Do you know what I mean? But they're not an idol group because they don't dance or they don't sing, but they're just rich, like, conglomerates. That's what they are. That is what their stick is. But it's just crazy because that is my main thought that I had anyways. And then so he's on the roof and that's what I mean, the show starts, it doesn't even ease you in. That's what I thought about the YouTube video when I was watching it as well. I was like, a show that doesn't ease you in to its program, you're just there and you're like, why is this person wanting to kill themselves in the first place? Number one. And then you see the red card thing and we're like, what does the red card signify? Then they do explain that anyways, because they're like, oh, the red card signifies like when F4 has it out for you or whatever, and you become an F4 target. And then obviously, yes, he's on the roof, and then we meet our main character, Jang D, right? Yeah, Goomjang D, yeah. And then, so meet her because she's obviously come there because she has some dry cleaning to give to the guy who's about to kill himself. Crazy timing, by the way. Do you know what I mean? We said crazy timing. She's going to come there and talk about dry cleaning when he's actually at his very limits and he's at his lowest, like actually the lowest of the low. And obviously, this is what I mean. Everyone's cheering for him to commit suicide. So, do you know what I mean? Think about it that way. Everyone is cheering him on to do it. And then Jang Di's just there like, oh, you have this bill for your clothes. She's basically like, it's like, it would be a meme. She's like, don't kill yourself. You have clothes to pay for. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like that. That's basically what she's saying. So she's standing there and she's like, oh yeah, don't do it. But otherwise, then he still goes ahead and he still jumps. He still jumps anyways. And then obviously Jang D jumps to his rescue. And that is basically like, again, that's when we say exactly, that's Jang D's. I was telling you guys about the origin of the show, but yes, that is Jang D's origin story. Exactly. Because obviously she wouldn't have ended up in Shinhwa, like obviously attending the school had she not have been there at that very pivotal time. Like she was there for a job, of course, but she wouldn't have been there otherwise. And so obviously, yeah, she saves the guy, and then it obviously becomes news. Do you know what I mean? She's on covers everywhere, and then obviously we're met with like, what's it called? Oh yeah, we're met with Jung Pyo's mother, like the evilest woman in the world. I mean, joking, but she is like very evil. Like I feel like she's the longest. Yeah, she's the wildest character I've seen. I meant in K-drama as of late. I mean, because I feel like you don't see much. Well, you do see a lot of villains actually. I mean, in K-dramas, of course, and a lot of exactly mother villains. You know what I mean? A lot of the time, there are a lot of mother villains, people who like have no, what's the word? Yeah, consideration for their children, and well, they say that they do, but they don't act like they do though. So that's why it's a whole thing of that. But so we met with her, and obviously she's like, oh well, we're gonna have to nip this in the bud because because obviously there's this whole story, and then and it would obviously put out a bad message that the school promotes bullying. Do you know what I mean? That they have this school that's full of rich kids and all these rich kids are bullying other children. So she's like, no, we can't have that. So we're gonna have to make this girl go to our school, like say that she's at our school, and that, do you know what I mean? Really just turn her into a savior of sorts or whatever. So that's basically it, right? So she becomes, a savior. She obviously, and again, she becomes a savior exactly to the school, but she also becomes a savior to her family. And I feel like that's the running theme all the way out anyways, because obviously she's at a rich school and they're not, and they are a poor working class family, so they need her there anyway. And that is basically her role. So that is what she does. And then so obviously I feel like exactly then when she starts the school, there's just obviously she just has so much problems because I guess she saved that guy, and then so she becomes a target for F4 as well. And then so she also gets the red card thing, and then obviously she meets all of the F4 members, which is Jung Pyo, Yi Jiyoung, Wonbin, and Jiho. Yeah, and Jiho. I was like, wait, how could I forget Jiho? But yes, and Jiho. So she meets all of them. And then, of course, her and Jung Pyo's relationship first starts out as like, what's it called? Yeah, it starts out as enemies to lovers. Although it is actually, no, I feel like exactly all the way through it is your classic enemies to lovers story anyway. Because obviously at first, exactly, he was out to get her. He was bullying her. He was doing the most craziest things to her as well. Anyways, that's why this show is so crazy. Anyways, and that's why I think people say it has this like, has this way that it's so cringe and bad. But honestly, I loved it. Like, this is the thing, I loved it, and I felt like that was also the universal reception too. Like, I meant obviously when I said earlier that I finished it and then I went on to Letterboxd, and it felt like, yeah, it's a consensus. We all say that Boys Over Flowers is bad, but it's bad. It's so bad that it's good. You know what I mean? You can't look away. So obviously it's one of those. Exactly. I love those. You know, those type of car crash shows. Ones that you just have to keep looking, and you can't help that. Oh my gosh, you know when I just said car crash, I just I just remembered about Jung Pyo. But moving on. I just remembered about Jung Pyo and I was like, wow, slow down. And I was like, we've only just started. We don't need to touch on there yet. We don't need to start on there yet because that is crazy. But right, we're just basically still in the beginning bits. But yeah, so obviously, yeah, and then she's met with, like, she finds out who the F4 is. She basically obviously has Jiho, which is like her, guys, I don't even know. He's like her. I feel like he was exactly an insider spy or whatever, because he was the only person in F4 who was really nice to her. All the rest of them were just like even Yi Ji Young and Wonbin, like they weren't really close with her. I feel like in the very beginning of the show, and I feel like they didn't really. Yeah, they didn't really care for her either. I think like I feel exactly like when I watch the whole entire show and I look at their, like, the boys' friendships all together, I feel like Yoo Ji Young and Wonbin are like really close to Jung Pyo, and then you just have Geo. I mean, they're all close, but I just mean to say that, like, you can just still see a dynamic, and I think that's normal in every friendship group. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, when you have a friendship group and it's like you all get on, but you can tell, like, you know, the rift or like the difference in, say, their personalities. So it's more like Wongbin and Yi Jiang, they more align with Jung Pyo, and then you just have Ji Yu, who's like, he's basically, yeah, exactly. When I look at him in F4, I'm like, he's basically the outcast, even though they are all semi the same because they're all talented and they all have these different things. Like, it's so crazy because it's like all four of the guys have these different, yeah, they have these different roles. I mean, like, Gio likes music, and he also, I don't know, what else was he doing? He likes music. I don't know if he really likes art, but no, I think his thing was basically music. Obviously, Yi Ji Young's was pottery and music, and then Wonbin's is more like, what's it called? His was to do with like, what was it? To do with like strength. He was more so like the body of the group. But then all of them were equally strong though anyways, actually. But then, and then obviously you have Jung Pyo, who's like, I don't even know what he is, but he's like the crybaby leader, I feel. I don't even know if that's the right term, but yeah, because I guess they're just like, it's classic Jung Pyo, like, to throw his toys out of the pram, and basically also in the way that, yeah, in the way that he was so committed to ruining Jang Di's life, and obviously he would have carried on doing it too. He's like, yeah, he would have carried on doing it too had he not fallen for her. We know what I mean. He was like, he's the type of person, you know, that like you could tell from the very early of the show that he doesn't want to ever let anything go, and when he has a challenge, he's going to go at that challenge, and you're not going to stop him either. He's going to keep at it, and it's going to be hard to take him off. But obviously, exactly, his feelings for Jang Di became apparent. And they were very, you know what I mean? I feel like, honestly, with the show, his feelings for her came super, like, quick. Like, I don't feel like they were slow at all. Do you know what I mean? It was only like, it felt like he bullied her for like, it looked like a long time, like, as in, it looked like he probably maximum would have bullied her for about a week, or two at most. But then it felt like, you know what I mean, that's what the time frame feels like to me as a viewer anyways. And then it just feels like, obviously, that immediately changed, where he was just like, oh, you know, I'm Jung Pyo, why don't you like me? Like, I'm showering you with all of these things, and like, you still don't like me. And we're like, hello. Like, the thing of the matter is, the show is crazy again, like I was saying. We're like, First of all, you were bullying us. So what do you mean? What do you mean? He was thinking she was just gonna fall for him overnight just because he's Jung Pyo, who's what's it called? Heir to a big enterprise, big group. So he generally thought, he's like, oh, I'm Jung Pyo, I have money, I have charms, and I have face. Do you know what I mean? I've got face, charisma, money, everything that a girl would want. We're like, no. Actually, we don't want any of those, to be honest. It's crazy that you'd think it would be that quick. But then also, I suppose another aspect of Jang Di and Gyeongpo's relationship is obviously, yes, small town girl versus rich kid, you know what I mean? And that's always a very good trope. But then it does get, you know what I mean? Like the trope sometimes, that one in specific, gets very I don't know, I was gonna say, does it get tedious fast? Then I was just like, it's very sad because of course it's just like, it is a lot of what's it called? It's a lot of tug of war. Yeah, it's a lot of tug of war actually. Just because in those relationships, it's like, oh, I can't be with you because we're from two different worlds. And it's like, oh, do you know what I mean? Like that is generally the running theme of the whole show. So generally, hey, I was going to say, if you don't like that, it's not for you. But then again, I'm like, I enjoyed it, but I still mean, for me, some points in the show, I was just a bit like, you know what I mean? I wasn't really feeling it just because it was a lot of that. And I was just, and I think a lot of the time, which was one thing I did like about it, I meant anyways, was the unpredictable aspects. Yeah, it was the unpredictable aspects because I generally wasn't sure half of the time if they would really end up together. And then also, obviously, you would put Jiho in the equation as well because you know what's crazy is I know that second leads are like, do you know what I mean? They're there. We see them all the time. Do you get it? But it felt like Jiho was there, and he was there like a lot. Like exactly. That's why it gave me moments of doubt where I thought that she would end up with him. Like there was so many instances where I generally thought, oh, she was going to decide not to choose Jung Pyo. And because the fact of the matter is also, I wasn't sure about how Jang Di felt about Jung Pyo. And she wasn't sure either. So then it was also like, you're not really helping me out either because I don't know if you really like him and you don't know if you like him either. But the fact of the matter is we knew, and she admitted that she liked Geo first. So I generally was like, oh, maybe that's where it's heading. And then that's what's crazy. I was like to myself, oh, will the second lead win like for the first ever time? Do you get it? Because they don't ever win. Yeah, because the second lead never ever wins. And then it's always the fact of the matter is that the second lead is better than the main in so many ways as well. And then I just feel like obviously Geo was obviously this time, like, you know what I mean? 10 out of 10, like Geo was better in this instance. That's what's crazy. Like, there's a lot of the time when you have a main lead and a second lead like lined up together, right? In a competition, and you weigh them out. Do you get what I mean? You weigh them out and you're like, okay, who's better? Blah, blah, blah. But I feel like with Gio, the fact of the matter is he was better because he was always there for her in every instance. And he was always, as well, he was protecting her from Jung Pyo as well. And that's what's crazy. And then also, and I think that was one scene in the show which reminded me of, I forget. Oh, it reminded me of Twilight for some reason. Do you see what I mean? I'm always connecting everything, right? And I was like, it reminded me of Twilight because obviously Jung Pyo was like, oh, if it was anybody, it would be you. And I was like, oh, that reminded me of Edward and Jacob's tent scene. Not that it was like, I don't think Edward ever said, oh yeah, yeah, no, Edward never said that because he's not the type to do that. But he was like, I remember in the tent scene though, they were like, oh, we could have been friends had it not been for Bella. I mean, I was like, oh, that's really cute. So it reminded me of that. Do you know what I mean? Just in the way that, obviously, I guess they do see, I feel like two people who like the same girl, they do see the similarities in one another. And then they also see how one person looks after that specific girl in the middle. So I suppose, remember, Jung Pyo had instances where he was like, he wasn't treating her well, but obviously Jiho was, and he was like, do you know what I mean? You would be great with her, and obviously do you know what I mean? It's this whole thing where it's like, oh, I can't. And that's why the whole time in the show I generally thought exactly that they weren't going to be together and it couldn't work. And I think, of course, their biggest obstacle was his mother. Like, she was the biggest obstacle of all. Like, she kept throwing obviously different things as well his way, and I guess most of the time I was generally like, how can it work without her? Like, you know what I mean? Or work with her in the picture. I was like, she doesn't like Jang Di, and she doesn't think Jang Di's good enough for Jung Pyo. So I was generally just like, how is it gonna work? And she obviously, yeah, his mum's like a puppeteer or even like a micromanager. So I was like, well, this isn't going to work because she's basically controlling your whole entire life. So how are you going to do this? And you basically have to, oh, and then every time that Jung Pyo would fight against the security guards, that would crack me up. It was the funniest thing ever. He's like, get off. And then he'd start fighting them. And we're like, first of all, these are your people. They semi-work for you. I don't know why you're mashing them up like this. It's just crazy. His tantrums made me laugh every time, actually. He's actually just like, I think, yeah, I feel like Jung Pyo is... Yeah. Is he baby girl? He is. He's baby girl autonomy, because he's just like, he's always crashing out and like he's always crashing out and always having tantrums, and it's just hilarious. And even his friends think that too. They just, when he's having a tantrum, they're just like, oh, they're like, okay, we'll just let you have it. Like, do you know what I mean? Let you have that moment because you obviously need it. Like, you obviously need the time to freak out, but then afterwards you'll be fine. So as I was saying before about the letterbox thing, I was seeing exactly a lot of fives and fours, right? And then of course, you know, because it's always, I feel like, as I said, I feel I've said this before actually, yeah, you never anyways see any piece of media, having yeah, you never see any piece of media having a full mark thing. Do you know what I mean? It's never like that. You're not going to see 555s everywhere. It never happens. And if you guys have come across that, let me know, because generally I never have. Because of course, whenever anybody watches any kind of piece of media, there's always one or two people who are going to have it, yeah, at a low rating. Do you get it? I think on Letterboxd, I encountered probably like, what was it? Yeah, a 1 star or a half or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? The fact of the matter is, I always think when people rate that low, I'm like, why are you even rating in the first place? Because that's just a waste of time. Because I'm just like, you basically wanted to, yeah, you really rated for nothing, because you're rating for basically 0. Do you know what I mean? Or then a half star. And basically, what's a half star? It's basically nothing. Like, it's basic, exactly. It's giving somebody a plate and giving them nothing. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I think critics are so interesting people. But then I'm a critic myself, of course, because I think we all are. But I meant the people who critic because they wanted to say something bad, you know? I think those people really interest me, because it's just like, you couldn't pick out one thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, and even in a show like Boys Over Flowers, actually, I'm like, yeah, the acting, hello. Yeah, the acting, the filming. I remember it has that film, do you know what I mean? That film-esque of that the fact that it's made old. Like, do you know what I mean? That it's made in the 2000, yeah, that's made in 2009. And you can feel that because the camera angles are like, do you know what I mean? They're all over the place. And then also the quality is really weird. Do you know what I mean? It's not quality that we know now, you know? So obviously it has all of that, but I get that. But my thing is with Boys of Flowers, exactly, you can't pick one thing. Like, my thing is that when I did my review, said something about, oh yeah, I said, like, because obviously I was like, we can all admit that it's bad. I said that. That's fine. I would never deny that. I would never deny that. I would say that, yeah, it's bad, but I was like, it's bad. It's so bad. It's good. And I also said Jang Di as a character, yeah, she'll just forever be iconic because of what she stood for. Do you know what I mean? And that's why Jung Pyo liked her so much anyways, because she didn't lie down. Exactly. She wasn't somebody who, I suppose, lied down to bullying and basically just gave in. She wasn't like the first guy. And I feel like that might be some kind of, it might be a bit of parallel type thing as they do in shows anyways. That is the thing, that guy, he was pushed to his limit, so he wanted to die. But like Jang Dee, she never really had a moment where she necessarily wanted to die. Sure, she was stressed, like a lot of the time in the show. She was stressed out, like we know that. But she generally was not ever at like a serious weak point. Even the scene where she got flour thrown on her, and then especially the other one where someone threw a plant at her. I was like, that one might stand out to me in all of the bullying scenes, because I was like, how could somebody throw a plant at you? And I'm like, if someone throws a plant at you, you're basically going to be concussed, or you might die. I was like, that is insane. That was the most insane time. It's the plant pot, and also the big one, remember, where Jung Pyo comes to save her. Like those two scenes in specific, they were like, wow, the bullying is bad. And that's why when I go back to Jang Dee's character, I'm just like, she's very persistent, and she perseveres as well. And I'm just so she's just the perfect, what do you call it, feminist character. Do you know what I mean? She's one of those. She knows. I suppose, of course, she knows that she's poor. Do you know what I mean? That's why she has those kinds of normal insecurities that somebody would have. Do you know what I mean? She's like, yes, I'm poor. What do you really see in me? And that's perfectly fine. You would expect somebody to have that, I feel. Anyways, do you know what I mean? You would expect somebody to think that when, you know what I mean, they're not rich, and then the person that does like them is. And also the person that does like them probably has he has a queue for women. We're like, it's not even like you don't get any, because it's literally like there's so many people here, and especially because he's a part of F4. Do you know what I mean? You already have that element as well. You're just like, you have that too. The fact that loads of people want you, and loads of people also know your name as well. Do you know what I mean? I've always thought about it that way. Imagine dating somebody who's so, what's the word? Yeah, who's so famous. That must be so gross, because that is even what I was thinking when Jang Dee would see him on the TV, and it's just like, and she obviously had to see him on the TV with that girl as well, when they did their shoot, and I was just like, oh, I would have thrown up. Like, I would have thrown up, because what are you doing? What are you doing, and what are you saying? Because it's just the most craziest thing. Obviously, actually, back to my review, I gave it I give it a 4 out of 5. Just on the basis that, the last episode, like, I would have to say, generally, the last episode was my least favorite out of all of the episodes. And that's crazy, because you never expect that to happen, guys. Generally, you don't. Like, you don't expect for a finale episode to really be the first one that you the worst one that you've seen, because the finale episode should always, I feel, automatically be the best. Do you know what I mean? It should automatically be the best, or it should just at least be, you know what I mean? It should at least be semi-good. But obviously, like, episode 25 was just like so random. And of course, what annoyed me is because when I was watching even episode 24, and then I saw it was in episode 25, I was like, really? They're just making episode 5, like, basically half of that episode was just what's his name? It was just Jung Pyo and that girl as well that he met in the hospital. And I was just like, why drag that on? Do you get what I mean? Like, K-dramas are always doing this where they have to put things at like the worst time. But then I just think that it ruined my experience, because I was like, that's not what I want to see when I'm finishing this show. And that's why I had to weigh it up against what's it called? I weighed it up against the whole entire show, but in the way that I was like, you guys are not going to change my mind in it being a 5, because of course it would have been a 5 had episode 25 not been like that. And then I think exactly, I wasn't mad at the memory loss storyline. I would never be mad at a memory loss storyline. Even though it's overused, I'd never be mad at it though, because you see it a lot anyways, remember, in like movies and stuff like that. So I would never be mad at it. But I was generally just like, it was the girl that was my issue. That's what it was. Because I was just like, oh, Jang Di's been here before. That's what it was. I feel like I stepped in the shoes of Jang Di. I was like, she's been here before and she has to go through it again with another girl that wants to take the person that she's interested in. I was like, give it a rest. I'm just like, what is she doing here? Do you get what I mean? That is what it was. I was just like, what is she doing here? And then it was just going to be another thing where it was like, oh, we've all invited you here for our proposal. And we were like, what? What do you mean? We was like, not a proposal. We said Jungpo's supposed to be regaining his memory. And you're talking about, oh, you guys are getting married. And then, of course, exactly, that girl's evil because I think people like to do that anyways. Like, you know, when someone will take somebody who doesn't have all their memories because it's the best time to, generally. It's the best time to strike because they don't really remember anything. And then I suppose what you can do is replace that person that was in their memory because obviously they're not around, innit? And well, basically you're taking them away, I guess, from the person that they're supposed to remember. And in doing that, then that helps for that person to be forgotten. Because she kept saying, innit? She's like, oh, Jang Di Uni. She's like, oh, he didn't remember you today, or he doesn't really have memories of you today. Like, oh, I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry. And actually, you haven't been trying. And she was also so quick as well to be like, oh, yeah, I made the lunchbox when she didn't actually make it. And that was really crazy to me. She didn't make the lunchbox, and obviously Jung Pyo asked her if she made it, and she didn't even hesitate to say no. I was like, have manners, like hesitate to say no. And then of course when she did make it the second time, he knew that it wasn't hers. We were like, well, that's your own business. You shouldn't tell lies, for starters. For starters, you shouldn't tell lies, because that's why it lands you in trouble, because now he's tasting it and he's like, this ain't it. You get it? He's like, this ain't it. And also like, yeah, I don't know. I did like Gio and Jang Di's relationship actually, but you know what's also, I suppose, yeah, Gio's just classic second lead anyways. I felt sorry for him, of course, because that's what's been happening for me recently, where I've just been getting sympathetic over second leads, and I'm like, oh, that's so sad. And that, honestly, because that is just generally why I felt. Because, obviously, I think even for Jiho, I felt that for him even more. Generally just because, yeah. Just because he had already had that, like, with the model. That was my thing. So it was a bit like, yeah. I didn't really like that. I think, in my head, I was like, oh, he's already been through this before. So I was just like, oh, he's going over it again, you know, like another bit of unrequitedness, do you know what I mean? Because obviously she was a model and he went there for her. Like, you know what's crazy? Exactly, it happened in the same exact way. I mean, because obviously Jang Di went to Macau, and then, you know, like this whole thing, I just mean that Gio even went with that model, and then of course he came back because then she went with somebody else. But yeah, like that's what I was saying. That's why I felt sorry for him anyways, because I was like, no, he just wants to be loved. And I was like, he wasn't able to get that from the person that he really wanted it from. So that's a shame. Do you know what I mean? And then I feel like that also relates as well to even Lee Ji Young's one as well. Kind of, though, just because Lee Ji Young had that crush of his, or his childhood crush, kind of. Yeah, she was his childhood friend, and obviously she liked him, but yeah, and I think he liked her too, but we couldn't really be sure. And when we heard about that story, it was like, it was a bit confusing, because I suppose he just made it seem like he didn't deserve love or whatever. But then again, obviously we can assume that he ends up with Gayo actually, but I don't really think they really did touch on that in the ending. Yeah, I don't think they really touched on that in the ending because obviously the ending is basically just like this is the thing actually is the ending might be semi rushed kind of if you think about it, but she basically just ends up they all just end up on the beach and then it's Jang Di and Jung Pyo's proposal. So it was all of them on the beach and I remember them all four of them being there. But I mean Gao Yu wasn't there though. So yeah, I don't really think that they did actually really. Actually, okay, no, I tell a lie. They did explore that, but then I just mean that I think so. Yeah, Yi Jiang and Jiao did end up together, but that's what I'm saying to you guys. That is very interesting, seeing as he was also in love with somebody else, if you look at it that way. And then I meant that Gio was also in love with somebody else, but obviously he fell in love with Jang Di, and then he didn't get with Jang Di. But, he was, he was fine with that, though, I think, anyways. I mean, he grieved it, as you do. Do you know what I mean? He had a crush on her, and he grieved the crush. Basically, I feel like, remember when he was hugging his granddad, he grieved it then. Do you know what I mean? That was his moment. He was making up with his granddad, but he was also grieving the fact that he wouldn't be able to be with Jang Di. So, and it was good that he let that out, I mean, because I feel like anyways, yeah, he was so selfless throughout the whole show. Do you get it? Because he could have had so many instances of I don't know. Yeah, they could have had some kind of I guess storyline where he had ended up kind of kissing Jang Di, like not even that scene, I suppose, when he kissed Jang Di on the hand or whatever. Yeah, whatever that was. We said whatever that was, but I meant if they had done a proper one where he'd actually kissed her, but he never really did that. He never really succumbed to his desires or his, you know what I mean? The guy was yearning, but he didn't ever really give in to them, and I thought that was really great. Do you know what I mean? And obviously because he only didn't because Jung Pyo is his friend, and he also really cared for Jang Di. That was obviously his main thing, and I just mean that he was so nice, and he basically just decided to help them out all of the way. Even in the times when they were apart, he still decided to help. Because that's what I'm saying. Take somebody again, back to Twilight. Take somebody like Jacob. Jacob never did that. Jacob, while Edward was away, was scheming. He was scheming. He was making plans. He was ready. So there you go, then. Jake was ready to go. He was all rearing. And he wasn't bothered that Edward wasn't there. So do you know what I mean? But you see, with Gio, he was like, no, I'm not going to do it, because obviously I feel like in a lot of, a few times he could tell that he knew that Jang Di really did like Jung Pyo, even though she never said it. Even though she never said it out loud for ages. In it, I think, remember, the first time Jang Di confessed it, anyways. The first time she confessed it out loud was when she was leaving. Are you alright? Are you okay? I would have went mad too. Do you get it? Obviously, Jung Pyo was having one of his tantrums again after that, and being on the floor and and rolling around. That's basically the type of person he is. He was on the floor and he was yelling, and we were like, yeah, I would have done that too, because what do you mean? It's like first time that's when you hear the confession, but then it's a confession and a goodbye. We said, come back. We said, it's about us right now. Where you going? Of course, I understood Jang Di's reasoning for doing that anyways, because of course, as I said, exactly, it was his mum. His mum was the issue, and she always kept inserting herself into everything. And oh my gosh, I think one thing I was saying when I was watching the show was that I feel like, exactly, his mum was like this because her husband was in a coma. Because you see what's crazy? After her husband came back, she was out here being a wife again. So maybe she's that kind of traditional wife. Do you get it? She generally needs to be able to take care of her husband, and that's what gives her the most joy. I know that's what it is, because exactly, you think, why else would a woman like that be so evil? You know what I mean? We don't really know what else it would be. It generally had to be to do with that. Exactly. When he came back from out of his coma in the bed, she was out here then feeding him fruit. I was like, yeah. I said, yeah, I get it. I get it. You were unhappy. You were unhappy that your man was in a hospital bed and it was too much for you. And I think you was under a lot of stress. But then what's crazy is I suppose it plays a factor in her as a person. But then you also think maybe she is also just like that. Because I think that was also the other angle that I heard. Because obviously the other angle was like, oh, I think that the mother is just like this. And I was like, yeah, but then I was like, I'm not really sure about that. Because I suppose when she looked at afterwards, exactly when Jung Pyo had the accident and she saw those people having the snacks at the what's it called? Yeah, at the side. I felt like, she felt like she wished that was her life for a moment. You know what I mean? She wished she could do little stuff like that, but obviously she can't because she's rich, and do you know what I mean? And that's why I do think she is a complex character. And this is the thing. A lot of evil characters are, as we know, do you know what I mean? They're not they're not fundamentally evil, it's not like they're not born evil. That's what we always have to look at. Do you see what I mean? It's the same thing. It's like, it makes you think of Wicked, isn't it? People are like Elphaba, or remember that's when Gunda's like, oh, no one is born wicked. You know what I mean? She's like, Elphaba had parents. Elphaba had a life. Elphaba had family. We're like, yes, exactly. So it's that same thing. Like, his mum was like that too, She's not, fundamentally evil. She had lots of stuff going on. That's why it's hard to it's hard to feel sympathy for those type of characters anyways. But that's what I mean. You have to unveil them. Do you get what I mean? You have to unveil them. You can't necessarily just be like, oh yeah, they're evil and that's why we should hate them. We're just let's say why. Let's say why. Do you know what I mean? Why is that? And I just think exactly. She was all about, I think exactly, and she also didn't know whether or not her husband would wake up as well. So this is the thing. She was obviously being like, oh yeah, he's a vegetable or whatever. She said that, I think, remember, to his daughter. And then she was just like, she didn't know where he was going to wake up. So she felt like she had to, press the fast forward button or whatever. So she just felt like she had to do all that type of stuff. And then, I suppose... Yes, another angle I also heard was that it would have been good to see Jang Di and Jung Pyo's wedding, and that's very true because it would have, and also it would have in the way that it would have been able to be good because we would have seen how his mum would have felt about that, because obviously exactly her whole thing throughout the whole entire show was all about pulling down Jang Di. Do you know what I mean? Especially when in it, she lost all the tactics she could to go after Jang Di, so she went for people around her. We were like, wow, it's so stressful for you. You have to go for people that are surrounded her, not even her herself, because that goes back to remember what I was saying about Jang Di's character. Do you know what I mean? She knew she wasn't getting under Jang Di's skin, not really. So she was like, oh, I really have to do something else. Not even exactly. She wasn't even getting under her skin, remember? Especially when she, knocked down her house. Wow, Din. That was actually crazy. That's probably, again, I feel like, that might have actually been one of her worst as well. You know what I mean? This whole show was just crazy. So that's why I felt like that was her mum's worst. Her worst one in trying to get, under Jang Di's skin. So I felt like so I felt like that was the literally worst time that she did. So again, what I was saying about Jang Di and her and her being bullied, it's just exactly, she was just like, carry on. She was like, carry on, give me more. And we were like, oh, sorry. You was like, you like being bullied, that's cool. She was just very strong. Yeah, along the way, she will meet the person who is going to be her best friend, and she will fell in love with one of the F4. But that's basically, remember, that's the thing that she got. So exactly, the prophecy was real. That's the thing. The one that she got in Macau was actually true, because obviously she found her, what is it? She found her soulmate, and she also found her husband. So obviously Jung Pyo was her husband and Jiho was her soulmate. But you never really knew. It's like you never really knew which way that was going to go, though. That was my thing. I just thought it was very good. And then obviously someone says it's very entertaining, and that the usual poor simple girl has to work hard with family struggles, but still triumphant, persevering with a smile, and has an extremely rich, famous Flower 4 guy falls in love with her. And oh my gosh, okay, last thing actually that I'll touch on about the show actually was I loved that some of them obviously picked up hobbies because of people that they loved anyways. So Gao Yu picked up pottery because of Yi Jiang, and I thought that was really special. And then Jung Pyo learned how to swim because of Jang Di. I forgot also I feel like, did Jang Di do something as well? I can't remember. Like, of something related to Jung Pyo. I don't actually know. I can't put my finger on it. I can't remember. This is the thing. I was meant to record this episode yesterday because I was like, I finished Boys Over Flowers like the other day, but I still wanted to do it when I really had everything that I needed to say. Of course, I've touched on lots of different areas in this episode, but I just mean that there's something else. Yeah, I thought that there was another hobby, but then this is what I mean. I thought it was good that he learned to swim for her, and that also I liked in it. I generally also liked the parts. Remember when obviously he was trying to get Jang Di to fall for him. I loved those points because they are very good. Like, especially remember the first one where he was waiting in the snow. And he was waiting for her for like 4 hours. And then also he did he also did that one where he got her a heart in the field or whatever. I think when that was when they were still in Macau. And then was that Macau? No, that might have not been Macau, actually. That was a different place. That was the first trip that they went on, because obviously Macau was when she went to go and get him, and then he was really cold with her. But that whole segment of the show, that was great too. Obviously that's when she meets that girl who was obviously into Jung Pyo, and obviously and was obviously also met Jang Di first though, but she was weird as well. But that's what I mean. Both of the girls in that show, they were both weird because they obviously both had an inkling that something was going on with Jung Pyo, but they still didn't really care. And then they came across sympathetic, but at the same time passive aggressive as well. I was just like, make up your mind. Like, what side are you on? Either you want to steal him or you don't. Do you know what I mean? They're like, Jang Di, like, oh, I think, isn't it, Jung Pyo does like you, but it doesn't matter because we're gonna stay here anyways. Oh my gosh, what's also the funniest thing about Boys Over Flowers as well? It was always looking at the different outfits as well. I enjoyed that a lot. As a fashion fanatic, I loved seeing what outfits that they had on. A lot of them was so bizarre. Like, I don't even know. You want to say Jang Di probably looked the best. Jang Di looked the best in that entire show. All the rest of the guys, their outfits were like outlandish and crazy. And I don't know. Their outfits were just something else, really. Especially like even, I think, who was it? Sometimes I feel like Jung Pyo's outfits were okay. Like, he was usually in like black, but then he usually had that weird fur coat as well. And then also Gio would be in like, I don't know, Gio practically gave female librarian at some times, and that was really hilarious to me because he'd have his glasses on and he'd also have the long hair on as well. Long hair, like before he had his haircut. that was really funny. Before he had his haircut, that was what he was giving as well. And then Yeah, and actually, oh, I just saw the scene, obviously, of when the girl asked him about when they did the truth or dare game, and obviously he's a great guy because he said both. He said again, remember when it was about love and friendship, and he said he'd choose both of them, and I thought that was really special, and I guess that's how you know that Jung Pyo is a good guy. So yeah, and remember, and also I just saw another scene where it was like when he was trying to woo Jang Di, and he was like, "Oh, I don't care that she's calling." He was like, "Oh, who's Jang Di?" like on the phone. He's like, "Who's Jang Di? Like, I don't know who that is," because he was acting all like, what's it called? He was trying to act all nonchalant. Like, do you get what I mean? But this is what's funny. Like, Jung Pyo is not nonchalant. He's very chalant. he he used to act like that in the very in the very beginning, but he was not that. He was said you're not that guy. He was actually like exactly. He would express his feelings a lot of the time. Even especially remember the one time when he really expressed his feelings. Remember when I think, oh yeah, when he missed Jiang Di at the airport and he wanted to give her those shoes. And then obviously he just fell to his knees and started crying. And we were like, wow, the guy has feelings. He feels. And it was just gorgeous, actually. But yeah, long story short, like, like exactly, long story short, because we're at like 50 minutes. I took the long way around. Boys Over Flowers is amazing. I think what I would like to do, seeing as this is a part of my K-drama a day, is I will also throw in a recommendation because why not? I mean, if you've stayed this long, that's what you should get. So obviously, I would say exactly after Boys Over Flowers, you should watch a new drama that's just started, which is Dynamite Kiss, which I am currently watching myself. And Dynamite Kiss is great. Do you know what I mean? It's wonderful. It's the type of like it's actually it's very addictive because I only started it like I feel like 3 or 4 nights ago, and then obviously I was watching it like no like last night, and then I was basically binge watching. I just couldn't turn it off because I suppose even like okay, even like Jang D and Jung Pyo, I feel like Dynamite Kiss off like they can fringe on that too, I suppose, because obviously Ji Hyuk is supposed to be like this rich guy in a rich family, and then obviously Darim is just like, you know, she's poor. She's also trying to pay for her mother's hospital bills, and she doesn't have a clue what she wants to do as well. She has no idea what she wants to work as, and she's just all over the place. And then also, I think what is another thing is that this K drama is not a slow burn either. You know what I mean? It's straight off the bat, like it just throws you into the intensity because of course in the very first episode we're met with a kiss because the show is called Dynamite Kiss. I generally didn't know it was going to be like that at all. Like I didn't know it was just going to throw you in there like that into their love story, because this is what I'm saying, K dramas like to build up love stories, right? And they like to do a lot of what do you call it, character building, so it takes a long time, but at least we know with this drama you get that you get that given to you right away. You still don't even have to wait, so I feel like it's already basically a winner, and I would be surprised if like the way I'm feeling about it changed, because generally I'm thinking it will be probably a 5. You know what I mean? And I just mean with K-dramas, again, I'd never really give them that any low numbers, to be honest. A lot of them are 5s. So I'm generally really excited for the journey of this drama as well. But obviously in the next episode I'll be sure to give you another recommendation. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of K Drama A Day.